Hello, this is Dr. Irie Lynne Session, and you are watching Community Bible Study with Dr. Irie. How's everybody doing today? Today in the news, there is a lot of talk and a lot of information on social media about the situation with Bill Cosby and the women who are accusing him of rape, of abusing them. And I find it quite interesting that in the African American community, there seems to be a divide. The black community in general, I would say, are having a real difficult time even considering the fact that, or considering a reality that Bill Cosby might be guilty of these awful acts of sexual violation. It seems that when now let me say this. I know that some of the alleged victims are Anglo, are white, and non-black, and some are black. I'm specifically talking about and interested for the purpose of this Bible study, the challenge that black women have in being seen as victims of rape and sexual assault. And this very idea may be some of the reasons why in our communities we don't talk about things like rape and incest and sexual assault and molestation. It may be a reason why many survivors of sexual victimization of whatever kind, who are in particular African American females, keep that to themselves, as well as African American men who are survivors of sexual abuse, that don't talk about it because sex period seems to be something that the black community, particularly the black church, does not talk about in a way that invites freedom of expression, that invites truth-telling, that is experienced in a non-judgmental way. And so I think all of that plays a part in the black community's resistance to even looking at or thinking about the fact that Bill Cosby, he could indeed be guilty. And what is really disturbing to me is that somewhere around between 40 and 50 women have come forward accusing him of drugging them and sexually assaulting them. Nearly 50 women have come together to do that. And yet, their voices by many are not valid. Like that 50, that doesn't seem to be enough, right? And my daughter made a point the other day. She said, "Mama, it just takes one man to call a woman a hoe and everybody to believe it. But 50 women come forward and accuse Bill Cosby of raping them, and we need more proof, right? We need more proof." I also want to say that I think that if this had been a white man, ergo the Oklahoma police officer, who was accused of raping black women, the black community would be in an uproar, right? Even though he was not a white man, he was not a black man either. I'm sorry, I did say he was a white man, but no, he was a non-black man. The black community is in an uproar, right? But when the same kinds of accusations are made against a prominent black man against women, then, and some of those women happen to be black, we have a hard time believing it. I think with Bill Cosby, we have a hard time believing it. Number one, obviously, because many of us grew up with him. I mean, honestly, it's a struggle for me. It's a struggle for me to wrap my mind around it. However, because of the years that I have worked with men and women survivors of sexual abuse, rape, and incest, I understand the feeling of being silenced. As a survivor myself, I shared this recently on Facebook that it was over 20 years after I was sexually abused and molested by more than one black man as a child, that I finally shared my story. And the only reason I shared it that one time was because I was living with a roommate, and she was black, and that particular day another one of our friends had come over, another black sister, and we were in our early 20s, and we were just having a conversation, but somehow the subject of sexual abuse came up, and all of us admitted or confessed to being sexually abused. All three of us in that apartment that day admitted and confessed that we had been sexually abused as children, as young people. And so that got me to really thinking and doing some research on this whole notion. And I discovered this book that I think every black woman should read. And it is a book by Dr. Gail Elizabeth Wyatt. It is called Stolen Women. Reclaiming Our Sexuality, Taking Back Our Lives. And what Dr. Wyatt does is she looks back in history at the impact of the dynamics of slavery on the psyche of both black men and black women, and how it has manifested and still manifesting itself, the consequences of some of that in the way we view our own sexuality, in a way we view sex, and why we don't talk about it so much. And she really gets specific, and she shares some real life stories of women, and she gives some statistics, and it's a good work. So I recommend anybody, particularly black women, who are interested in and not just black women, but black men too, because some of the stuff that my brothers are saying and asserting, I think it's because of their lack of insight and knowledge about the effects and the impact of sexual abuse on women. Another book that I highly recommend is by Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas, and she is a professor, and I believe she's still at Howard University, Howard Divinity School, Sexuality and the Black Church, and she offers a womanist perspective on that. So what I want to really look at today is this whole issue of the silencing of black women. And let me say, there is a difference between being silent and being silenced. Being silenced has to do with oppression. Being silenced has to do with being afraid of the consequences that will be levied on you if you speak up, right? For example, women telling the world that Bill Cosby sexually assaulted them. They are being vilified. They are being called liars. They are being asked questions like, well, why didn't you speak up before now? And so those are consequences that some women may not even understand why they didn't speak up. You know, if you ask me, well, why did it take 20 years for you to say something? And that in that 20 years, I didn't even say anything to my own mother. One of the reasons is because I believe my mother already knew, which later I found out she did, and she didn't say anything to me, so I grew up thinking, oh, this is something we don't talk about. But all the while, carrying that within my soul, within my spirit, it caused me to think and feel certain negative ways about my own self. And so there are many reasons why women who have been victims or who have survived sexual abuse and sexual assault don't feel that they can speak up, because many women don't feel like they will even be heard or they will be believed. And that sexual assault and sexual victimization is something that is so personal to our bodies and to our minds, and we already lived with a feeling of shame, because most of those women, I bet you, feel like to some degree they're thinking, what did I do wrong? Or at some point in the processing of what happened, they are questioning what they did wrong. They are questioning, did this really happen? They're questioning so much. There is a certain amount of fear, seeing the power that this man has. But in our world, whether a man is a celebrity or whether he is the janitor, by virtue of him being a male, we have been socialized to believe that the male voice is the voice, that the male voice is the powerful voice, that the male voice is the voice that will be heard and will be listened to, and not our voices as women. There's a story in the Bible that I think speaks to this silencing of women, particularly black women or women of color. And it's a story found in 2 Samuel chapter 13. Many of you probably already know the story. It's the story of Tamar. Tamar, who was the daughter of King David. Tamar was raped by her brother Amnon. Yes, he was her stepbrother. They had the same daddy, different mamas. Nevertheless, he was her brother. And he betrayed her. He lied to her to get her to come to his room, to get her to come to his apartment, shall I say. But in this text, what is so interesting is that there are five men, four other than Amnon, who it seems or who it appears were all colluding in an effort for Tamar to suffer this victimization and then live with the consequences of it. One man was, of course, the uncle of Amnon, who questioned Amnon about what his problem was. Amnon was walking around the house looking, upset, looking depressed. And so Jonadab asked him, well, yo, what's up? What's wrong with you? Amnon tells his uncle, I'm in love with my sister, Tamar. So Jonadab colludes with Amnon to trick her into coming to his apartment so that Amnon could have his way with her. Well, it happened. Unsuspecting Tamar goes to her brother's apartment where he rapes her. She cried out, begging him not to do it. Didn't matter. He did it anyway. The silencing of this woman's voice. She begged him not to rape her. He did it anyway. He didn't ask her, can I have sex with you, sister? No. He just took what he wanted from her. He overpowered her, right? So then after that, after he overpowered her, then he told his servant, because the Bible says that, of course, in the beginning he said, I'm in love with my sister, I want to have her. After he rapes her, the Bible says he hated her just as much as he had loved her. So after the brutal rape, he tells his servant, get her out of here and bolt the door behind her. So here's the servant, someone else in collusion. I wonder if he heard her screams in the apartment, if he heard her begging him, and he, as the servant, stood outside at the door and just listened, and then got her out of there, bolted the door behind her. At no time did he yell for his master, don't do this, you're doing the wrong thing, stop, help her, nothing, no help. Her voice was silenced yet again. Another part that blows my mind is as Tamar is leaving, she runs into her other brother, Absalom. Now, by this time, Tamar has her clothes ripped off, right? She's looking like something violent and vicious has just happened to her. She runs into her brother, Absalom, and here's what he asks her. I got to read this for you. He asked her, he says, let me turn the page here. He asked his sister, oh goodness, where is it? Has Amnon, this is what he asked her when he sees her. He says, the text is in verse 20. Her brother Absalom said to her, has Amnon, your brother, been with you? Has he been with you? Now, I didn't get a chance to unpack this verse to look up what the Hebrew word been with her meant. That's something I'm going to do. But that's what the interpretation of that Hebrew word says. Been with her. Has he been with you? Then he says, because she must have said yes. Again, it doesn't show her even giving a response. So again, this woman is silenced. Has Amnon, your brother, been with you? Here's what Absalom says to her. He says, be quiet for now, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this to heart. Excuse me? Yeah, he's my brother, and he just violently and viciously raped me, threw me out of the house, bolted the door behind me, and you talking about don't take this to heart? Well, here's what she did. So Tamar remained a desolate woman in her brother Absalom's house. So you got Jonadab seemingly colluding with Amnon. You've got the servant seemingly colluding with Amnon. You've got now the brother colluding to keep Tamar silent, but there's one more. Listen to this. When King David, that's her daddy, when King David heard all of these things, he became very angry. Okay, why are you angry? Are you angry, David, because someone violated your daughter? Are you angry because she is your possession and somebody took advantage of something that belonged to you? He says, but he would not punish his son Absalom because he loved him, for he was his firstborn. Ain't that a ish? David finds out, her daddy finds out that his son raped his daughter Tamar, and he refused to punish him because he loved him. Oh my God. And that's how we feel about, I think, Bill Cosby. We love him. We love what he has meant to us in our lives. We love Cliff Huxtable. That's who we love. We love how we gathered around the TV sets on Thursday nights, I think, on Thursday nights and watched the Cosby Show. We loved seeing an image of an intact black family with two professional parents and children who were doing things with their lives, who were smart, and we love that. And so we don't want him punished. We don't even want to think about the idea that maybe he did something wrong. And so a segment of our society, women, and in this case, black women, as usual, are silenced, are made to feel, are re-victimized. We got to do better than this. We have got to do better than this. We as a community, we as a people, we as a world must begin believing women and girls who cry out like Tamar, asking for help, asking for someone to hear them, asking for someone to stop. Remaining silent and feeling voiceless, feeling that your cries for help don't matter, have long-lasting negative effects. I hope you have appreciated our conversation today. I hope you've appreciated this study. This study shows us, this text does not have a happy ending for Tamar. I wish it did. I wish it did. But for many survivors of assault, for many survivors of sexual abuse, there isn't a happy ending. We live with it every day. And every time we see something on TV like this, every time we see something where the voices of women are silenced, or victim blaming or victim shaming, it causes some women to go back into that dark hole, to live that desolate life, that life of depression, that life of doom and gloom. And here's, I didn't look up this word desolate. What does it mean? It means to be deserted by people. Tamar lived a desolate life. She was deserted by people who should have loved her, who should have protected her, who should have been by her side, but they were not. And so, yes, she lived a desolate life. She lived a life of emptiness. Do you know that women can be successful? Women can have wonderful jobs, be PhDs, and be empty? Women and men who are survivors of sexual assault often live empty, desolate, depressed lives because they feel and believe the abuse taught them that they don't matter, that their cries don't matter, that their bodies don't matter, that their spirit and their souls don't matter. But I'm here to tell you they do matter. You matter. If you're listening to this and you are a survivor of sexual abuse, of sexual assault, of rape, of incest, if you are a man or a woman, a girl or a boy or a teenager, you matter. What happened to you was not your fault. There is nothing you did, nothing you could have worn, nothing you could have said that could have stopped the perpetrator, if they wanted to, from hurting you in such a vicious and vile way. It was not your fault. You are a wonderful, beautiful child of God, even though you don't feel like it on the inside. How you feel about yourself does not diminish the truth of who you are. You were created to image God. That means that you are worthwhile. That means that you are special. That means that you are unique. That even means that God can take what happened to you. Let me say this. God did not cause it. God did not cause what happened to you to happen to you so that God could, transform you into some powerful speaker or a teacher or a preacher or a social worker. God didn't have to do that to make that happen in your life. But what God does do, and what God has done for me and many, many others, is use what happened to us in a way that will enable us to help other people. God can transform that traumatic experience into a testimony that is fruitful and productive to building up somebody else's life. And I believe that God can and will do that for you. But healing has to happen. And so we've looked at Bill Cosby. We've looked at the black community and why the black community may be, and of course I know I'm making a general statement, but why the black community may be resistant to even entertaining the idea that he may be guilty, that he may have raped all of those women. We looked at how black women traditionally are treated in our world, and we looked at several resources that may be helpful. One, Stolen Women, that looks at and explores how we have, as black people, have been impacted by slavery as relates to sex and sexuality. Then we talked about Kelly Brown Douglas, Sexuality in Black Church, which does the same thing through a womanist lens. And then we looked at the scripture. We looked at 2 Timothy chapter 13, where it shares the story of another woman of color whose voice was silenced, and how that impacted her spirit and her soul. She lived the remaining of her life a desolate woman. And so it's time out for us not believing the victims. It's time out for us. I'm getting this because I gotta have my daughter to come turn off the video. She's not in here right now. I don't want to. India, please forgive me. I hated to do this, but she was supposed to be coming and checking on me. But anyway, so I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope that this may have helped someone as you think about your own life and the impact that sexual abuse has on people. India! Thank you. I might have to get up and cut this off myself. Irie Session! Okay, she's nowhere to be found. So I guess I'll do this myself.